Let's start with the simple facts. Starmer's office received word on Tuesday that journalists were probing a cache of 2008 emails between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, and those messages showed Mandelson encouraging Epstein to fight for early release and expressing strong personal support even after conviction. They were not in the government's vetting file. They surfaced through a defunct email account and were first reported publicly on Wednesday evening. Mandelson was sacked on Thursday morning. That timeline is now uncontested. Does that exonerate Starmer? Well, on two counts, yes. First, prior to the appointment, Number 10 specifically pressed Mandelson about exactly the issues that later blew up. Did he, or why he maintained contact after conviction, whether he'd stayed in touch with Mandelson, whether he'd stayed in an Epstein property while Mandelson was in prison, and any association with a Maxwell-linked charity. Those questions went from Starmer through his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, and whatever else one says about the appointment, the right questions were asked up front, and there's a paper record to show so. Second, when Starmer actually saw the emails on Wednesday night, he judged them reprehensible and removed Mandelson the next morning. That is the decisive act the public expects, and it came once the material was in front of him. But exoneration is not absolution from criticism, and communication inside government plainly misfired. The Foreign Office had a media inquiry detailing the emails on Tuesday and passed it on to Number 10, yet the Prime Minister told the Commons at midday on Wednesday that he had confidence in his ambassador because he still had not been shown the content. That is a systems failure, not a cover-up, but it is an embarrassing and politically costly failure. It handed opponents a free hit on judgment and drift. Now, given the fact that checking somebody in the first case costs about £50,000, this is money wasted, but it also exposes Mandelson to the charge that he is not just the king of spin, but a liar. And that is more worrying than the fact that there is sort of dodginess turning up in his background. The deeper ethical point, therefore, is one about candour. Ministers told Parliament that additional information showed a relationship with Epstein that was materially different to what has been disclosed in vetting, including the suggestion that the first conviction was wrongful. The last element was not just tasteless, it went to credibility. If Mandelson told Number 10 in essence, yes, I knew him, but not like that, the emails contradict the temper of that reassurance. Whether you call that being economical with the truth or simply self-exculpatory, it's grounds for dismissal. But it also suggests that the vetting by MI6 or whoever's conducting that for government appointees at the highest level is ineffective. It's not worth the £50,000 that it apparently cost. Now to Nigel Farage, the grinning, gurning opportunist in the gallery. As Mandelson fell, Farage floats himself as a very tempting US ambassador and even advised Starmer to offer him the job to get him out of the way. If I were you, that's what I would do. Oh, I'm not shallow. This is an extraordinary confession of political strategy dressed up as public service. Office as a fire exit from responsibility for a volatile movement that he has just set ablaze. It fits the pattern. He incites, he inflates, and he sidles off when governing consequences arrives. It's showmanship, not stewardship. And it's very much the measure of the man, isn't it? Why does this matter? Because the ambassadorship is not a trophy for celebrity populists or party patrons. It is the UK's senior diplomatic post in Washington during a fraught period, requiring discretion, security clearance without headaches, and the trust of both the White House and the Hill. After the week we have had, the next appointment must be boring on purpose. Unimpeachable process, zero drama. That is how you repair statecraft. So what should Starmer do next? Publish a short factual note on the timetable and handling. The Guardian, the FT and others have already pieced together most of it, but the public deserves a clean chronology from Number 10. It clarifies that he asked the right pre-appointment questions, that internal routing failed on Wednesday, and that he acted within hours of seeing the material. Transparency ends that drip. Fix the information chain. When a red flag media inquiry lands on a Tuesday about your ambassador's historic emails, it must be in the PM's box by Tuesday night. That is an operational discipline issue for the Foreign Office and Number 10 combined. Announce the procedural patch, then live by it. Appoint an interim who is already in post and universally respected, which has happened, and then a permanent ambassador with deep diplomatic or security credentials, not a factional celebrity. The list already circulating in Westminster includes such names. Pick gravitas over headlines. And what of Mandelson himself? His advisory firm moving to cut ties tells you politically how radioactive this has become. Whatever his earlier governmental talents, his public judgment about Epstein and his private tone in 2008 are incompatible with the standards we rightly expect today. There is a difference between loyalty to a friend and defending the indefensible. He failed to keep that line. Whether there needs to be further investigation to find who else was in Mandelson's pocket, I have no idea, but I suspect some trolling around the House of Lords as well as the backbenches of the House of Commons would not be inappropriate for MI6 or MI5 or whatever. And as for Farage, his wink that he'd happily take the Washington job because it would get him out of the way tells you everything. He's always auditioning, always angling for the next camera, the next platform, the next escape hatch. Leadership, by contrast, is about staying in the room when the air turns toxic and the decisions get ugly. On this week's evidence, Starmer stayed and took the hard decision once the evidence crossed his desk. Farage mugged for the lens and pitched himself for the embassy. Voters can judge which looks more like governing. And let's close with the core lesson. The schoolboy error in politics is not asking the right questions. Starmer did precisely that. The adult error is letting process break down at the worst moment. Starmer's machine did break down. Fix the machine, keep the standards, and appoint a low-drama ambassador with high credibility. Treat the office as duty, not theatre. If Westminster follows that script, this episode will be a painful footnote, not a running wound.